Hello all, and welcome back to my Darkseed Deep Dive video series. I know I promised a compendium of all my videos in one convenient place, but I got some more suggestions and I wanted to make some videos to cover them. Today's topic revolves around Paul Cooper, the Messenger, and the Satanic Book Club. This topic was brought to us by Gussie Jives, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that name right. In fact, Gussie Jives also breaks their thoughts down as well, so much so that I think my job is done here. So, thanks for watching, AMF! Okay, I'm only kidding. Okay, like I said, I'm going to break this down into three topics: Paul Cooper, the Messenger, and the Book Club. Let's start with Paul. Paul is a strange individual, which says a lot given that there's so many strange people in Darkseed too. His voice is robotic, he overwaters his lawn, and he spouts off things like,
"Nothing ever happens here. The town is full of cobwebs and stagnation. It needs a good cleansing. Until the murders, the place was just too quiet."
And
it was as if the town was waiting for a messenger or something. So I'll water the lawn and get it ready. I want to have a nice lawn ready for the messenger when he comes.
It's been a while since I wrote my first Darkseed deep dive, but I'm starting to think that Paul is just your average Joe. He states that he's only been living in Crowley for 8 years, and he really didn't know Rita. I have a feeling that Mike is projecting things onto Paul and into their conversation. Remember, Mike is the unreliable narrator, so he can't necessarily take anything at face value. Paul's dialogue about the messenger and people dying can occur before talking to Mrs. Ramirez. However, Paul brings up the fact that Rita was murdered before he starts spouting off nonsense. Remember, in the news scene, Mike immediately imagines the Keeper once Rita's murder is brought up. The same thing could be applied to Paul's dialogue. He brings up the murder, insinuating that the town was peaceful until said murder. Mike heard that and immediately thinks that Paul is talking about something evil. I do like Gussie Jives' idea of the messenger being the mailman or lady, but remember, the mail lady is a person of good, as she delivered Slim's uniform of protection.
No. Eleanor, my mail carrier delivered it to me. She's some cutie, let me tell you. The uniform came out of a catalog.
Players actually never get to see Paul's House of Horrors until after the third hypnosis session, and it's hard to say if anything after the third dream happens at all. Granted, you can in fact skip the third dream, but I kind of lean towards that's more of a programming bug than anything else. I can't remember if I actually mentioned how long the day actually takes in a previous video. I did want to create a separate video focusing on this topic, because we can see the time changing based on Dr. Sim's clock, but I don't think I can actually make a dedicated video. As many know, Darkseed 2 was almost complete when the developers lost everything due to a virus. Apparently, the original team left and another team remade everything from scratch. I have a feeling that a lot of things slipped through the cracks. And besides the fact that you can skip the third dream sequence, like I already mentioned, there's really no other reason why I think that. Anyway, one such bug happens in Dr. Sim's office. The clock changes depending on when Mike enters/leaves, or realistically when the hypnosis session starts. It starts at 9:05, which means that the game should start before 9 a.m. Right before the first hypnosis, it changes to 11:15. During the second visit, at least in my playthrough, the clock goes from 1:10 p.m. to 11:15 a.m. back to 1:10 p.m. right before the second hypnosis. The time then goes from 11:15 a.m. to 3:20 p.m. in the third session. Then, when the game ends, the time goes to 9:05 again. I'd say that it could be 9:05 p.m. given Jack says Mike was out of it for a while, but I have a feeling it reverted back to the 9:05 a.m. time frame. The only reason I brought this up is for the sake of completeness. I still contend that things that happened after the third hypnosis session is up in the air in terms of whether it happened or not. So, long story short, Paul is a normal guy that Mike ties the occult stuff to. The messenger is just another monster like the shapeshifter in that it's another boogeyman for Mike to beat. This is further solidified when Mike reads Paul's version of the Necronomicon. Even though that may not be happening, Mike believes it is, and his mind is creating the events he is living out. And his mind is creating the events that he's living out. Remember, Mike has delusions of grandeur where he makes himself out to be the hero of the world, and also the dark world, which he made up. That said, let's move on to the book club. The first inkling of the book club is mentioned by Slim at the end of the first encounter. He mentions investigating a hired hitman and a satanic cult. Mike, never wanting to waste an opportunity to solve his own mystery and be the hero, goes out and creates the scenario involving people from the town. It just so happens he does inadvertently figure out who murdered Mr. Ramirez, so he solved the hitman mystery. However, the book club isn't mentioned until Mike pisses off Sheriff Butler.
I heard you used to date Rita.
So what if I did? Rita was interested in lots of men. Jealous, Dawson? Is that what made you snap and kill her?
Did Rita dump you because you couldn't satisfy her, Sheriff?
Why, you little turd. I'll have you know that I was the one who dumped her. She was too bookish. Always running off to spend time with that reading group of hers.
Just what was this reading group that Rita belonged to?
I don't know. Some of Rita's friends, people from the library, I guess. She was always trying to get me to go with her, but I couldn't see myself sitting around with a bunch of eggheads discussing poetry. That's why I dumped her.
And Mike's off. He's subconsciously mad at Rita for trying to get with the sheriff. He's mad at Doc Larson for the things in his little black book. He's mad at the mayor for fooling around with her. And he's mad at Paul because Paul is a bad game show host.
Oh boy.
I don't believe we ever see or hear anything about them being in a book club until players look at the picture in Paul's house, or when Rita's steamy head mentions it to Mike. Either way, neither of those scenes are reliable since they happen after the third dream. That said, could you imagine someone like Doc Larson actually being in a book club? Same with the mayor, for that matter. Like I already mentioned, I believe that Mike just associates these individuals to the club so he can say that they were up to no good and justify what he did to them. I do want to quickly go down a rabbit hole and address something from the strategy guide, written of course by Leanne Morris. In it, she states that the town of Crowley, Texas is named after Aleister Crowley, unknown occultist, which is a term that has a bit of a history that I wasn't aware of. Occult sciences were apparently developed in the 16th century and revolved around three practices: astrology, alchemy, and natural magic. Thinking of occult now, I think of black magic or spiritual things. In any case, Aleister Crowley is known for many things, but most notably for the creation of Thelema, which I'm probably mispronouncing. But it's a religion that is based on finding one's true will. True will meaning finding one's divine purpose that is unique to that one individual. A purpose that transcends their own desires and societal expectations. Given the town is named after Crowley, I thought it might be cool to see how Mike fits this teaching. I'll try to fit it to both games, even though the reference is only made in Darkseed 2. Let's start with Darkseed 1. Mike is a writer that purchases a house and is trying to live his best life. That's commendable, but that doesn't necessarily fit the true will narrative. Well, what about fighting aliens from another dimension? Yeah, I think that fits the true will narrative. Now, things are going to be pretty similar for Darkseed 2. Mike does fight off the aliens again, but this time he finishes them off for good. Of course, this is all in his head, but the narrative is that Mike creates a scenario for himself, given he lives a pretty mundane life. Of course, there's also the scenario he creates about the messenger, satanic cult, and hired hitman, which again, he actually sort of figures out the hired hitman. But at the end of the day, Mike is kind of going overboard with the true will teachings. There's more to Crowley's ideas in religion though, specifically his sacred text, the Liber Al Vel Legis, or Liber Al, or just the Book of the Law. It was apparently dictated to Crowley from a beyond human being named Aiwass. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right either. Aiwass was referred to as a holy guardian angel, an angel that gave Crowley a message. A messenger? I'm not entirely sure I'm ready to tackle something this deep. Full disclosure, I'm really only reading through Wikipedia articles to learn a little bit more about this. Although it is interesting that Aiwass was described by Crowley in one of his works to be the devil, whose emblem happens to be Baphomet, which is kind of what the thing in Paul's basement looks like. And in a weird way, I think it also looks a little bit like the thing that Mike turns into. While I sit here and make jokes about things in the light world, the True Will teachings actually seems to have inspired some aspects of the Dark Worlders' religion, specifically the 3 points. The High Priestess mentions that
the light illuminates our lives. It shines with universal truth. It will obliterate the darkness of all that is false or evil.
It kind of matches the basic ethics of the Book of the Law. That is, the primary of these is, do what thou wilt, which is presented as the sum of the law and a right. Although I guess that's kind of generic and maybe doesn't fit, but it kind of did in my head. Anyway, let's move on to another potential reference. Given that the town is named after an occultist, I kind of wondered if anyone in the town was named after similar references. The only reference I could find was Gerald Gardner. Like Jimmy Gardner, Gerald was the local wise guy and also rounded up ladies for the local medical examiner. Okay, I made that part up. Gerald Gardner was actually influential in the creation of Gardnerian Wicca, or Gardnerian witchcraft. Granted, Gardner didn't name this himself, but it is named after him. I could spend time reciting things off Wikipedia, since I'm not an expert in the subject, but I won't since I'm just speculating that Jimmy Gardner is a reference to Gerald Gardner. I will say, though, Gerald Gardner and Aleister Crowley did know each other, so there's that. Anyway, let's do a quick 180 from witchcraft, and let's talk about Bible references. Do you guys think that the behemoth in Darkseed 2 was based on the Leviathan? Leviathan is described as a colossal sea serpent that can swallow fishing bolts and ships whole. It embodies envy, it's a fallen angel, it's invincible, and it's able to travel dimensions. Of course, I'm cherry-picking here. Obviously, Leviathan was a sea creature that commanded sea life. It's just interesting that Darkseed 2 centers on envy with Mike being jealous of everyone that even looked at Rita, and there's a large snake-like creature for Mike to fight. The behemoth from Darkseed 2 can also transport to another dimension, and is invincible once it does. Of course, that being said, I guess there are biblical references to a creature known as the behemoth as well, but that creature is equated to a hippo, rhino, or even elephant. I don't know, I think it'd be pretty neat to look into this more, but I think I'm getting too deep about a game where the main puzzles are playing carnival games.
Yeah, be careful, the ring's heavy. Hey, you missed, pal.
So, to try to neatly wrap this up into a bow, Paul is just a normal guy that Mike projects onto. The Satanic Book Club is probably just a book club if it even existed at all. And the messenger is brought up because, well, Mike disassociates himself from the conversation as soon as Paul mentions Rita. Anyway, I think that's enough about the Satanic Book Club, occultists, surface level Bible study, and creepy neighbors. I hope you enjoyed today's video and found it a little interesting. Feel free to leave a comment suggesting other topics to discuss. That said, as always, thank you for watching, and AMF, adios my friends.